Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for something, something massive. We're tackling a subject that is effectively the Mount Everest of motorsport.
It really is.
We are talking about a man whose name became synonymous not just with winning, but with a relentless, almost machine-like dominance that actually changed how the entire sport operates. We're looking at the life, the career, and the complicated legacy of Michael Schumacher.
It is the definition of a massive topic. You just look at the raw numbers in the files we have here, and they're still hard to compute, you know? 7 world championships.
7.
91 Grand Prix wins, 155 podiums, 68 pole positions. I mean, for a whole generation of fans, he wasn't just a driver, he was Formula One.
Exactly. If you turned on the TV in the early 2000s, you saw the red car, you saw that finger raised in victory, and you heard the German anthem.
Yeah.
It felt inevitable. But our mission today isn't just to list the stats. We have stacks of biographical records, telemetry reports, and retrospective analysis here. We want to figure out how he did it. How do you go from a kid in a pedal cart built from scrap parts to a global icon?
And maybe more importantly, how do you reconcile the sheer technical brilliance with the ruthless, sometimes dark controversy that seemed to follow him everywhere?
That's the real question.
That's the core tension of his career, isn't it? It's a story of duality. You have this incredible capacity for team building and this sensitive driving style, but it sits right next to this win-at-all-costs mentality that led to some of the most cynical moments in sporting history.
And then, of course, the tragedy that happened after the racing stopped.
Which cast a shadow over everything.
So let's rewind. Let's get away from the champagne and the podiums and go all the way back to the mud. We're going to Hürth, West Germany.
Yeah.
Late 60s, early 70s. Now, the common perception, and I think this is true for all of F1 drivers, is that they come from money. You need cash to go racing. But looking at the biographical notes, that really wasn't the case here, was it?
Far from it. This is a genuine working-class origin story. His father, Rolf, was a bricklayer. That's a physically demanding blue-collar job.
Right. Not exactly a millionaire's lifestyle.
Yeah, not at all. He eventually took a job running a local kart track, to be closer to the sport. And his mother, Elizabeth, ran the canteen there. She was selling sausages and fries to the visitors. They weren't funding a racing career with family millions or anything like that. They were scraping by.
There's this great detail about his very first vehicle. It wasn't some sleek professional go-kart bought from a dealership.
No, not even close. It was literally a pedal cart, the kind a toddler uses. Rolf modified it by bolting on a small motorcycle engine when Michael was just 4 years old.
4 years old.
It was a Frankenstein creation.
Yeah.
And true to form, Michael's first major act as a driver was to crash it, promptly, right into a lamppost in Kirpen.
Which usually ends with parents taking the keys away and saying, "That's enough of that."
Right. But Rolf and Elizabeth saw something different. Maybe it was the speed of the impact, or maybe just his enthusiasm, but instead of banning him, they took him to the Kirpen-Horum track, which was a proper facility.
So they leaned into it.
They did. He became the youngest member of the karting club, but the financial ceiling hit them almost immediately. There's a note here about an engine he needed that cost 800 Deutschmarks.
Which, for a bricklayer in the 70s, is a significant chunk of change.
It was impossible. His parents simply couldn't swing it.
So how does he keep going? I mean, if you can't buy the engine, you got race. That's the end of the story.
Resourcefulness. This is where you see the hustle start to kick in. He had to rely on local businessmen for sponsorship, literally going around asking for support. But more impressively, he was winning club championships at age 6 using a cart his dad built from discarded parts.
Wait, discarded parts? You mean literally from the trash?
Parts that other wealthier racers had thrown away because they were slightly worn or not the latest spec. Rolf would fish them out of the bins, clean them up, and bolt them onto Michael's cart.
That's incredible.
So while other kids arrived with brand new Italian chassis and fresh tires, Schumacher was winning on scrap.
That has to put a chip on your shoulder. You learn that you can't rely on the equipment to save you. You had to outdrive the deficit from the very beginning.
Absolutely. It teaches you to fight for every single inch. If you lose momentum, you don't have the engine power to get it back. It forces a very specific conservationist driving style.
And speaking of fighting the system, we have to talk about the Luxembourg loophole. This feels like a perfect early example of Schumacher, or at least his support team, finding an advantage in the fine print.
It's so clever. It's the first time you see that mindset of the rules are what you make them.
So explain this. What was the rule?
So German regulations at the time had these strict age limits. You had to be 14 years old to get a kart license. Michael was 12. He was ready to race. He had the talent, but the state said no.
And most people would just wait 2 years.
But waiting 2 years in motorsport is an eternity. You lose your edge, you lose momentum. So his father did some research and realized that just across the border in Luxembourg, the age limit was lower.
No way.
Oh, yeah. So they went to Luxembourg, got his license there, and he started racking up race experience 2 years ahead of all his German rivals.
That is classic Schumacher, bending the rules to get a head start. And it clearly worked. He becomes the German junior champion, then the European champion. He even quit school to work as a mechanic, which I think is a crucial detail. He understood the machine from the nuts and bolts up.
He was completely committed. And as he moved up into the junior Formula 3, he started winning, well, everything. But there is one specific race in 1990 that we really have to unpack.
I know where you're going. The Macau Grand Prix.
Macau. If you want to understand the psychology of Michael Schumacher, the competitor, you have to look at Macau 1990.
And this involves Mika Häkkinen,
Yeah.
right? Who would go on to be arguably his greatest rival in the late 90s.
The very same. So Macau is kind of the World Cup of Formula 3. It's a street circuit, very narrow, very fast, walls everywhere. The winner is decided by aggregate time over 2 heats.
Okay.
Schumacher wins the first heat. In the second heat, Häkkinen is faster. He's all over him. Häkkinen needs to pass Schumacher to win the overall title.
So it comes down to the final lap. The pressure is immense.
Late in the race, Schumacher makes a small error, or perhaps a calculated one, coming onto the main straight. He runs a bit wide. Häkkinen sees his chance. He gets the slipstream. He pulls out to pass, thinking he has the move done.
And this is the moment.
This is the moment. Just as Häkkinen commits to the overtake, Schumacher looks in his mirror and changes his line. He blocks him.
But he didn't just block him. He blocked him late. Very late.
Crucially late. It's what drivers call a reactionary move. Häkkinen had absolutely nowhere to go. He slammed into the back of Schumacher's car at high speed.
And Häkkinen is out.
Instantly, he spins, hits the wall, race over.
But what about Michael?
His rear wing was destroyed, just dangling off the back of the car, but the car was still drivable. He limped across the line, won the heat, and took the prestigious Macau Grand Prix title.
That sends a terrifying message to the rest of the grid, doesn't it? I will not make it easy for you to pass me, even if it means we both might crash.
It was the debut of the Schumacher chop. It established that he was willing to risk the car and his own safety to keep the position. It's a psychological weapon. If you know the guy in front of you is crazy enough to crash you out, you think twice about trying to pass him.
Right. And strangely, after all that success, he doesn't take the normal path to F1. He doesn't go to Formula 3000.
No, he goes into sports car racing with Sauber Mercedes.
Which seems counterintuitive. Why drive these heavy, enclosed prototypes if you want to be in open-wheel racing? That's like training for a sprint by running a marathon.
On the surface, yeah. But it was a masterstroke by his manager, Willy Weber. In F3000, you're doing short sprints. You drive flat out, burn the tires, finish. In Group C sports cars, you are driving these 1,000-kilometer races with 900 horsepower.
So it's about endurance.
It's about endurance, fuel efficiency, tire management. He learned how to handle a heavy car with massive power. And maybe most importantly, he was dealing with professional press conferences for a major manufacturer, Mercedes. It groomed him for the big time, in a way F3000 just couldn't. He arrived in F1 not just as a fast kid, but as a total professional.
And the big time came calling in 1991, the Belgian Grand Prix, Spa-Francorchamps. This is one of the most famous debuts in history, partly because of the bizarre circumstances that opened the door.
It is a story of pure opportunism. Ideally, you don't want your F1 debut to happen because another driver is in jail, but that's the reality.
Wait, in jail?
Yeah. Bertrand Gachot, the driver for the Jordan team, was imprisoned in London. He had gotten into an altercation with a taxi driver and pepper sprayed him.
Which is not legal in the UK?
Highly illegal, so he's in jail. Eddie Jordan, the team boss, has a seat to fill for the Belgian Grand Prix, and he needs cash. Jordan was always looking for funding.
And Mercedes, who had Schumacher under contract in sports cars, saw an opening. They paid Jordan, about $150,000 to give him the seat, but Eddie Jordan asked a very specific question to Willy Weber.
He asked, has he driven Spa before?
Because Spa is arguably the most difficult, most dangerous track on the calendar. It's 7 kilometers long, it goes through a forest, the weather changes constantly. Knowing the track is essential.
And Willy Weber, without missing a single beat, told Jordan, yes, he knows the track well.
which was a complete lie.
A total fabrication, a bluff. Schumacher had never driven a lap of Spa in his life. He'd only been there as a spectator years before.
So the deal is signed on the basis of this lie. Michael arrives at the track. He has to learn this huge 7-kilometer circuit full of blind corners before practice even starts.
So what does he do? He pulls out a foldable bike.
A foldable bicycle.
He rode around the track on a foldable bike to learn the layout, just pedaling through the Ardennes forest, looking at the apexes, memorizing the bumps. That was his preparation for driving a Formula One car at 190 miles per hour.
It's insane. And then he gets in the car, the Jordan 191, which is a beautiful car, but a midfield car at best, and qualifies 7th. Seventh. He out-qualified his veteran teammate, Andrea de Cesaris, who'd been in F1 for a decade. It was sensational. The whole paddock went quiet. Journalists were calling him the best talent since Stefan Beloff.
He actually retired on the first lap of the race, right?
Yeah, a clutch problem. He likely babied it too much trying to save it and burned it out. But the damage was done. Everyone knew who Michael Schumacher was, including Flavio Briatore at Benetton, because this is where the business side of F1 gets really ruthless. Schumacher races for Jordan one weekend, and by the very next race, he's in a Benetton.
It was a hostile takeover. A legal battle ensued, lawyers got involved, contracts were scrutinized. But Benson won. They saw a future world champion, and they just grabbed him immediately. And that partnership, Schumacher and Benetton, would change the dynamics of the sport.
Which leads us directly to the 1994 season.
Oh, 1994.
Talk about a year that defines a legacy. You have the horrible tragedy of Ayrton Senna's death at Imola, which cast a shadow over everything and left a vacuum at the top of the sport. And then you have the championship battle itself, which was just riddled with controversy from start to finish.
It is the most politically charged season in modern F1 history. The Benetton B194 was fast, undeniably. But there were constant allegations that it was using illegal software.
This is the launch control issue, right?
Yeah.
Explain that for us.
Correct. So earlier in the 90s, cars had driver aids like traction control and launch control, essentially computers helping you drive. Those were all banned for 1994 to make it harder to put it back in the driver's hands.
Okay.
The FIA analyzed the software code of the Benetton B194, and they found a hidden menu system. And in that menu was an option called launch control. This is a system that manages the engine revs and the clutch to give you a perfect getaway at the start, preventing wheel spin.
Yeah.
And that was strictly banned.
So why weren't they kicked out? I mean, if the code is there, isn't that a smoking gun?
It's tricky. Benetton's argument was that it was leftover code from the previous year that they hadn't deleted because the software was so complex. They claimed it was deactivated and inaccessible to the driver.
And the FIA couldn't prove they'd used it.
They couldn't prove it had been activated during a race. They couldn't find the keystrokes that turned it on, so they couldn't ban them. But the suspicion tainted the whole year. People thought Schumacher's amazing starts were computer-assisted.
And on top of that, he got disqualified from 2 races. One for ignoring a black flag at Silverstone, and another at Spa for wearing down the wooden plank under the car.
Which meant despite him winning on track, the points gap closed right up. It all went down to the final race in Adelaide, Australia. 1 point separating Schumacher and Damon Hill.
A winner-takes-all scenario.
And we get the defining controversy of his early career, lap 36. Schumacher is leading, but he's under immense pressure from Hill.
He makes a mistake.
He goes off track. He brushes the wall with his right side tires. He damages his suspension. You can see the car lurch. He bounces back onto the track. Damon Hill comes around the corner, sees Schumacher struggling, and thinks, this is it. This is my chance. He dives down the inside to pass.
And Schumacher turns in.
He turns in violently. They collide. Schumacher's car goes up on 2 wheels and crashes into the tire barrier. Hill limps back to the pits, but his suspension is bent beyond repair.
So they both retire.
Both retire. And because Schumacher was ahead on points going into the race, he wins the world championship while standing behind the guardrail.
The eternal question. Was it on purpose?
Well, the stewards ruled it a racing accident at the time. But if you look at the footage and you look at what happened in Macau in 1990, it fits the pattern.
He knew his car was damaged.
He likely knew it was terminal. He knew if Hill passed him, he lost the championship. It was a split-second decision. If I don't finish this race, he doesn't finish this race. He was vilified in the British media. They called him a cheat. But in Germany, he was the first ever German world champion, a national hero.
He did validate it the next year, though, 1995. That was a display of pure dominance to silence the critics.
It was. He won 9 races. But the highlight was the Belgian Grand Prix again, at Spa. He qualified 16th in changing wet-dry conditions.
Yeah.
To win from 16th at Spa is almost impossible. He fought his way through the field, battling Damon Hill on slick tires in the pouring rain, and won. It proved that 1994 wasn't just luck or electronic aids. He was simply faster than everyone else.
So he's a two-time champion. He's on top of the world. And then he makes a decision that, at the time, must have looked like career suicide. He leaves the championship-winning Benetton team to join Ferrari.
Yeah.
And we have to clarify, for you listening, Ferrari in 1996 was not the powerhouse we know today.
No, and this is hard for modern fans to get their heads around. Ferrari in the mid-90s was a tragedy. They were a mess.
A mess.
A total mess. They hadn't won a driver's championship since 1979. Their culture was chaotic. The pit crews were disorganized. The technology was lagging. They were famous for politics and pasta, not for winning. Alain Prost had been fired a few years earlier for comparing the car to a truck.
In the 1996 car, the F310, Eddie Irvine, who was Schumacher's teammate, called it a piece of junk.
It was terrible. It was their first year with a V10 engine, but the aerodynamics were clunky. It looked like an armchair. It was unreliable and incredibly hard to drive. But this is where the legend of Schumacher the driver really begins.
Yeah.
Because despite driving this piece of junk, he won 3 races that year.
3 races in that car.
3. And one of them, the Spanish Grand Prix, is widely considered one of the greatest drives of all time.
The Regenkönig, the Rain King.
It was torrential rain. Visibility was near zero. The car was awful, and Schumacher was lapping 3, 4, sometimes 5 seconds a lap faster than anyone else on the grid.
5 seconds a lap? How is that even physically possible?
It was a demonstration of pure car control, of finding grip where there was none. He was taking different lines, exploring the wet parts of the track to cool his tires, modulating the throttle so precisely that he just found traction. He lapped the entire field up to 3rd place. It went beyond what the machine should have been capable of.
But the road to the title with Ferrari was agonizing. It took 5 long years. And along the way, we had another one of those dark moments. 1997, Jerez-Jacques Villeneuve.
This was Adelaide 94 all over again, but clumsier. More desperate. Schumacher is losing the championship by 1 point going into the final race. Villeneuve goes to pass him for the lead.
And Schumacher turns in.
He turns in, but this time it backfires completely. Schumacher hits Villeneuve's side pod, bounces off, and ends up beached in the gravel. Villeneuve's car survives, he continues, and he wins the title.
And the punishment was severe this time. The FIA didn't just call it a racing incident.
No, they stripped him of his 2nd place finish in the championship. He was disqualified from the entire 1997 season history. It was a humiliation. Schumacher later admitted it was the one mistake in his career he would change if he could. It showed the fragility of that competitive drive, the instinct to eliminate the threat rather than be beaten.
Then came the broken leg in 1999 at Silverstone. A brake failure.
A massive blow. Ferrari finally had a car that could win the championship, and their lead driver is out for half the season. But crucially, he returned at the end of the year to help Ferrari win the Constructors' Championship for the first time in ages.
He played a supporting role.
He played the number 2 role to try and help Eddie Irvine win the driver's title, which showed a maturing of his character. He wasn't just selfishly motivated, he was a company man.
And that all set the stage for the golden era. The millennium, 2000 to 2004. 5 consecutive titles.
The dam just broke. 2000 was the emotional release, 21 years of waiting for Ferrari. There's that famous moment at Monza where he equals Senna's win record and he just breaks down sobbing in the press conference.
I remember that.
That wasn't just about the record. It was about the immense pressure of carrying the hopes of Italy on his shoulders for 5 years. But after that emotion, it just became a machine. 2002 was absurd. He finished on the podium in every single race. He won the title in July.
In July. The season was barely halfway over, but even in that incredible dominance, he couldn't escape controversy. Austria 2002. The team orders.
Ah, yes. This is the moment that turned even some of the fans against them. Rubens Barrichello, his teammate, was leading the race comfortably. It was only the 6th race of the season. Schumacher was already leading the championship by a mile.
So there was no need for it.
No need at all. But on the final lap, Ferrari ordered Rubens to move over. He slowed down right at the finish line, and Schumacher passed him to win.
And the crowd booed. You could hear it over the engines.
It was a PR disaster. It looked like they were fixing the race. Schumacher tried to push Rubens onto the top step of the podium during the ceremony, but the damage was done. It raised the question, why? You are so much better than everyone else. Why do you need to do that?
It's that relentless need to maximize every single point.
Regardless of how it looked to the world, He treated F1 like a math problem, not a show.
So let's pivot to the how.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about the mindset, but what was he doing technically inside the cockpit? We have notes here on telemetry that are fascinating.
This is the real secret sauce. Most drivers operate in a pretty binary way. Brake, then throttle. You hit the brake to slow down, you turn in, you hit the gas. Simple.
Right.
Schumacher pioneered a technique called brake overlap. Telemetry showed that he would brake later than anyone else, but as he turned into the corner, he would keep the throttle slightly open while still braking.
Why would you do that? Doesn't that just burn up the brakes and confuse the car?
It stabilizes the car. Think about the physics. When you brake hard, the nose of the car dips down. If you release the brake suddenly, the nose pops back up, which changes the aerodynamics and makes the car unstable at the most critical moment.
Yeah.
By dragging the brake against the throttle, he kept the car's platform flat and stable. It allowed him to carry much, much more speed right into the corner apex.
But he's balancing the car on a knife edge with both seats.
Exactly. He preferred a car that was loose at the rear, meaning it always wanted to oversteer or spin, and he would correct it constantly with the steering wheel and pedals. He was multitasking at 200 miles per hour in a way other drivers simply couldn't process.
And he had the physical capacity to do that because of his fitness.
He completely changed the sport's approach to fitness. Before Schumacher, drivers were fit, sure, but they weren't elite athletes. Some even smoked. Schumacher trained 4 hours a day. He set up a mobile gym at the Techno Gym. He focused intensely on his neck muscles to withstand the crazy G-forces. Drivers like Giancarlo Fisichella noted that after a grueling 2-hour race in Malaysia where the humidity is 90%, Schumacher wouldn't even be sweating.
Well, everyone else was collapsing on the podium.
Exactly. And that physical reserve meant his brain was still receiving plenty of oxygen and staying sharp on the last lap. While other drivers were getting tired and making mistakes, Schumacher was basically doing math problems in his head.
He also built the team around him. He didn't just drive. He was a leader, a general.
He was.
Sure.
He lured the best brains, Ross Brawn, the technical director, and Rory Byrne, the designer away from Benetton, to come with him to Ferrari. He created a shield around the team. If the car broke, he never blamed a mechanic in the press. He worked late. He tested constantly at their private track, Fiorano.
That's loyalty.
Jean Tott, the team principal, said he was actually very shy and had high integrity internally, which really contrasted with the arrogant, cold persona the public often saw.
So after breaking every record imaginable, he retires in 2006. He has a great final battle with Fernando Alonso, sort of passing the torch.
Yeah.
But he couldn't stay away.
No, the bug bit him again.
He comes back in 2010 with the new Mercedes team. He was 41 years old. And honestly, a lot of people look at that period, 2010 to 2012, as a disappointment. No wins. Only one podium.
Statistically, yes. It wasn't the Schumacher of old. He struggled with the new Pirelli tires. They degraded very differently, and the ban on in-season testing meant he couldn't practice and adapt like he used to.
And he'd had that motorcycle accident.
A big one in 2009. He had lingering neck issues from that. But if you dig deeper, the Mercedes insiders tell a very different story.
How so?
People like Ross Brawn and James Vowles, who is now a team principal himself, they credit Schumacher with laying the entire foundation for the Mercedes dominance that followed. He taught that team how to operate like champions. He pushed for infrastructure changes, better simulators, better data analysis.
So Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg inherited a machine that Schumacher helped build.
He was the architect, even if he didn't get to live in the house he designed. And he still had these flashes of brilliance. Monaco 2012, he set the fastest time in qualifying. At 43 years old, on the hardest, most precise track in the world, he was still the fastest man over 1 lap.
I forgot about that.
He didn't get to start on pole because of a penalty from the previous race, but the speed was still there.
Now let's look at the man behind the visor for a moment.
Yeah.
He was notoriously private.
Extremely. He separated his racing life from his personal life with a huge wall. He moved his family to Switzerland to escape the paparazzi. He wanted his kids, Gina Maria and Mick, to grow up as normally as possible.
And he was incredibly generous. I don't think people realize the scale of his philanthropy because he just didn't broadcast it.
He didn't do it for PR, no. The number that always floors me is from the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Schumacher personally donated $10 million.
$10 million. That is a staggering amount for one individual.
It was more than many large corporations donated, more than some entire countries. He built schools in Senegal, clinics in Sarajevo. He gave away millions, and mostly did it quietly. He was also a massive advocate for safety, helping develop the modern lightweight carbon fiber helmet.
Which brings us to the cruelest irony of this whole story. December 2013.
It changed everything. He'd been retired for a year. He was skiing in Marbella in the French Alps with his son Mick. He was a very experienced skier.
Morse.
But he crossed an unsecured off-piste area between two marked runs, fell, and hit his head on a rock.
And despite wearing a helmet,
The helmet saved his life initially. The doctors were very clear on that. Without it, he would have died instantly. But the impact caused a severe traumatic brain injury. He was airlifted to a hospital in Grenoble and placed in a medically induced coma.
and since then, the updates have been incredibly scarce.
The family has maintained a strict bubble of privacy, which is absolutely their right. He was moved back to his home in 2014. We know from legal proceedings in 2016 where his lawyer had to correct a magazine report that he cannot walk.
Right.
Jean Todt has mentioned watching F1 races with him, but noted that Michael struggles to communicate and that their friendship is different now. It's a silent battle that they're fighting in private.
And the media hasn't always been respectful of that silence. There was that awful incident in 2023.
That was shameful. A German magazine published a cover story, a first interview with him since the accident. It turned out to be completely generated by an AI.
They just made it up?
They fabricated the whole thing. The family took legal action, and the editor was fired, as they should have been. It just shows the desperate hunger people still have for any news about him and how that can be exploited in the worst way.
It really is so tragic. A man who lived his life on the absolute limit, who survived the most dangerous eras of racing, laid low by a leisure accident.
It reminds you of the fragility of it all. But when we look at his legacy, we have to look at the whole picture. He professionalized the sport. He raised the bar for what a driver needs to be, physically and mentally. Every driver today, Hamilton, Verstappen, Norris, they are all operating in the paradigm that Michael Schumacher created.
Before we wrap up, there is one final thought I want to leave you with. A what-if that comes from a very credible source. Ross Brawn.
This is a fascinating bit of speculation. Ross Brawn suggested that if Schumacher had stayed with Mercedes past 2012, if he hadn't retired that second time, he would have been driving the 2014 Mercedes hybrid.
That car was a rocket ship. It was on another planet compared to the rest of the field.
It was utterly dominant. Mercedes just nailed the new hybrid engine regulations. And Braun thinks that Schumacher, with his incredible technical understanding and that car, could have won an 8th world championship.
Imagine that. An 8th title. It completely rewrites the history books.
It really makes you wonder how different the entire Lewis Hamilton era would look if the old master had stayed for just 2 more years to reap the rewards of the team he helped to build.
That is a thought that will keep racing fans up at night. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the legend of Michael Schumacher. It's a story of triumphs, of controversy, and of undeniable complicated greatness.
A true legend.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.